Have you ever wondered what happens after we die? John, who had been dead twice, narrates his near-death experience of seeing a massive Roman structure with his deceased uncle as a guide, waiting for him in a field near a beautiful pond. He felt a kind of happiness he never felt before, a feeling of true happiness that combined all of his happiest memories. Watch the full video to know more about John's incredible journey. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strange stories.
Hello, my name is John and I'm 40 years old. I want to tell you about my near-death experience because I haven't told anyone about everything that happened to me while I was dead twice. But first, let me back up and give you some context. As previously stated, I'm 40 years old, but my medical issues began much earlier in my life. When I was 25, I had my first heart attack, and almost every year after that, I had a heart attack or another medical problem. When I was a kid, I was very active and would never sit inside and be lazy, preferring to go outside and do something, anything. I enjoyed sports and being outside until I had my first heart attack at the age of 25. I had another one the following year, and that was when I had my first NDE. I remember being in my mother's room talking with her while she was on her computer, and then being in the ambulance with the paramedics working on me. I was freaking out, telling them I was fine and wondering what they were doing and why they were all rushing around. It was perplexing, but as I was telling them I was fine, my chest began to hurt. And boom, I awoke again in front of a massive building. Well, building is a strange way to describe it, but it's difficult to describe. Standing in front of a structure that resembled those Roman structures with the extremely tall pillars, the light appeared to be coming from all directions, as if there was no single source of light. The front of the building featured a massive doorway. There was no door, only a doorway. As I gazed at this structure, my uncle, who died about 5 or 6 years before, stood beside me. He informs me that I will have to enter the building, but he will accompany me. I walked through this massive Colosseum building with massive pillars lining the entire length of the middle. Nothing was said as we walked, and it didn't feel like anything needed to be said. I was relaxed and didn't feel the need to be concerned. When I got to the middle of the room, I heard my grandfather say, "This is not your time," and we came to a halt. When I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. After that, the heart doctor implanted a stent and told me I was lucky to be alive after being clinically dead for 14 minutes. So fast forward about 10 years, during which time I had more heart attacks, multiple knee surgeries, neck fusion, and all of my lower back was fused. And then boom, another major heart attack again. This time, I awoke in a lovely rolling field on the edge of a large pond. As I look around, I noticed the same massive pillar building on top of a hill in the back left corner of this field, as well as a waterfall that seemed to appear out of nowhere and was falling into the other side of this large pond. But as I looked, I noticed that where the water was falling into the pond, there was no disturbance to the water. It was quite lovely. There was also a tree line on the back right side of this field that extended all the way out almost to the middle of this field. This tree line is important. As I look around, I notice my uncle, who was there when I died the first time. He smiles at me and says, "Hello," again. I remember him raising his arms and asking, "Do you like it?" in reference to my surroundings. "Yes, I do," I replied. He lowered one of his arms and motioned towards the pond, saying, "This is where we'll be fishing." And as I look down, I notice that I'm about an inch above the surface of the water, looking down into the pond and seeing large fish swimming around. When I return my gaze to him, he motions for me to join him on the other side. "There's someone waiting for you," my uncle says. I immediately get this feeling that runs through my entire body, the feeling that I was experiencing. Well, the closest way to describe it would be love, but with that feeling also came knowledge. Not from my uncle saying anything to me or from me guessing, but absolute, finite knowledge. This knowledge told me that I knew who was waiting for me, which made me even happier. Let me pause for a moment to say something, and then I'll return to my story. I'm constantly in pain as a result of my medical issues. Moving is difficult. Standing or sitting for long periods of time both cause pain on top of the pain I already have. Walking stings and running is out of the question because of other medical issues. But when I was dead and gone, I didn't feel any of that pain or depression. I felt happy, but not in the way we would say, I'm so happy because I got a new car, or I'm so happy because Haagen-Dazs ice cream has made a new chocolate flavor. No, this was the kind of happiness that combines all of your happiest memories into a constant feeling of true happiness. And when I said that my uncle told me, or he said, I never saw his mouth move. He just smiled. It was more like his voice was implanted directly into my head. And when I say we walked, well, walking is probably not the right word for that either. It was more like gliding. So I felt no pain or tiredness from moving or walking or gliding while I was there. Now, let me return to my story. I knew who was waiting for me and where I needed to go right away. My uncle and I started walking across the field toward the tree line in the back right corner. The trees were large, but not sequoia-sized, but with brightly colored spring leaves. We came around when we reached the edge of the tree line, which stopped about halfway through the field, and saw a house. Kind of gets a little weird here. This was a 2-story beautiful house with a porch, but as I walked to the house's corner to look down the side, I noticed that the house was attached to a truck, but not just being pulled by this truck, but like the house was the truck's bed. Someone could get in and drive away with the house. I know it's strange, but when I saw what truck it was, it made sense. It was a green dually, which for those who don't know, is a larger than normal pickup truck used to tow fifth-wheel trailers. So I returned to the porch of the house, went to the door and knocked because I knew who was going to open it. I knew it had to be my father, who had died a few years before this happened. I knew it in every fiber of my being. But before he could open the door, I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was my grandfather, who died around the same time as my father, and the same grandfather who dragged me from there last time I died. He appeared to be almost, I can't say angry because it was concern, not anger. Kind of like when as a kid you do something dangerous and your parents see and they run over and hold you and say, never do that again. Do you realize how dangerous that is? We could have lost you. I guess the best way to describe it is a concerned scolding. I didn't see him, but that's how his voice sounded. He's not done yet. He has to go back, my grandfather said this time. Not to me, but sounding like he was speaking to my uncle, who was his son, in that scolding but concerned tone. My grandfather's hand grabbed my arm and pulled me up. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by nurses and doctors. I had a couple of follow-up appointments with this heart doctor, who was standing over me when I woke up, and he told me this story. You're the luckiest man I've ever seen, Mr. Bagwell. I assumed he was going to tell me that I needed to change my diet. No. He said I was clinically dead for 27 minutes and they'd been working on me the entire time. He put down the defibrillator at the end and said, I'm calling it. For those who don't know, this means they're halting their efforts to resurrect me. I put the paddles down, looked up at the clock and said, mark down time of death, he continues. He tells me that while he was trying to say the word death, the heart monitor that was still attached to me beeped once. Huh? He asked. Then, well, let's try one more shock. So they shocked me once more, and my eyes popped open wide, scanning the room and attempting to move around. I recall one nurse saying, oh my God, and another saying he must have a guardian angel watching over him. The doctor also informed me that the defibrillator had shocked me 13 times and that I had burns on my chest if anyone needed proof. In 2010, I was the victim of a home invasion in which I was shot in the torso, which is a whole different blog post. I thought I was going to die, but I pulled through. Let me conclude by saying that after dying, I returned to the same location twice and was greeted by the same person both times. I was dragged from that location twice by the same person, and each time it was different. So my brain wasn't trying to show me the same thing twice. Some will claim that it was the brain releasing chemicals, or that I was receiving drugs through my IV in addition to the chemicals released by my brain, or some other medical nonsense. This was an incredible opportunity to, well, experience. It showed me exactly where I was going when I died, as well as that I'd led a good life, because I'm sure that experience would have been very different if I hadn't. The first time I died, I thought the corridor of pillars I was walking down was leading me to something or someone very important. But, unlike the second time I was going to see my father, the first time felt different because it was more important. That's it for now, but I do occasionally remember things I didn't think of the first time, so I'll probably add to this post if that happens. I'm not interested in those of you who have negative things to say about my experiences or want to make comments about how this happened medically. I am aware of what occurred. All that matters is that I was in a beautiful, good place with a family who loved me. So don't try to persuade me to understand or believe your negative viewpoints, because once again, I'm not interested. I'm not saying you don't have the right to your own opinions, but please don't try to force them on me or make me believe them. This is a supplement. I'd like to clarify that when I died the first time and was told I was going to see someone, I wasn't thinking of God or anything. What I meant was that it was someone significant, which could have been another relative or anyone. I'm not trying to convince anyone that this compelled me to start going to church every day right away, and I'm not attempting to persuade anyone of my beliefs. I wrote this to share my experience and what happened to me, not to preach religion to them. If you have any questions, please email me or leave a comment on the blog, and I'll get back to you and try to answer them. I will say, however, that I have felt different since both cardiac arrests. As in, I can feel and sometimes see things, but I try my hardest to block them out, and so far I've been successful. But lately, I've been feeling like I don't want to cover that up any longer. So if there are any mediums or sensitives out there who want to take on a student or just give me some sound advice, please let me know. I don't talk to the dead, and I don't see the dead yet. I believe that if I begin mentally breaking down the wall I built to keep everything out, I will be able to strengthen my ability.
Thank you, John, for sharing your story with us. It's truly fascinating to hear about your experiences during those moments when you were clinically dead. It's incredible to hear about the visions you saw and the feeling of happiness that you experienced. We're glad that you were able to come back to life and have the opportunity to share your story with us. If you want to hear more stories about people's near-death experiences, make sure to check out our channel Strange Stories, where we share stories from people just like John who have had incredible experiences during their brush with death. Subscribe to our channel to never miss an episode, and don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.